Thank you so much. What a joy. Thank you. Thank you. I thank Jack Lessenberry, Metro Timer.
Okay.
He's a big man in the media here, but if you rendered the BS out of him, he would fit in a matchbox. Hey, this ain't for sissies. We're the Democratic Party event. I want to start by celebrating those who are in absentia, which is to say they're not here. And that's good folks like Ron Gettelfinger and Debbie Stabenow and Governor Granholm and Mrs. Levin's boys, Sandy and Carl. You know, they're out doing what needs to be done, and that is not standing up for the UAW, that is not standing up for unions, that's not standing up for Detroit, it's not standing up for the auto industry, it's standing up for the middle class in America, and we need more of that. I thank Chairman Brewer and Chairman Woodward. I thank Governor Cherry over here and our pal Gary Peters. You know, there's a guy back at the turn of the 1900s named Ken Hubbard. He was a predecessor of Will Rogers, and he once said that every now and then an innocent man gets sent to the legislature. There's our boy, right here. And my old pal Jim Blanchard, up and down the road we had been, he's uglier than an elbow wrinkle, as you can see. But by God, he'll do for the heavy hauling. He does the heavy lifting, and that's what I like about him. And to our awardees here tonight, and most importantly to all of you, the rank and file Democrats of Oakland County and Michigan generally. This is the state that ran John McCain and Sarah Palin out before the election. I got to tell you, beating Republicans is about as much fun as you can have with your clothes on. Think about it. Well, thank you for allowing a scrawny Texas populace to come in here and be a part of your deliberations and cogitations here tonight. It makes me happier than a mosquito at a nudist colony to be looking out at all of you Phil Hart hellraisers, you Michigan bushwhackers and corporate butt kickers, you middle-class champions and agitators for America's progressive values. That's what's represented here in this room tonight. I've got to say, it is a privilege for me to stand here on the platform having anything to do with Phil Hart. I did not know Phil Hart, but I was in his presence eons ago. I was but a tyke working for Ralph Yarborough, as Jack indicated, the last great populist senator from our state of Texas, Phil Hart. And so I was rubbing up against him. He didn't know it, but nonetheless, there I was with great giants like him in the Senate. Phil Hart, a guy who practiced those progressive values that we stand for of economic fairness, social justice, equal opportunity for all people. That's what we represent as a Democratic Party, and that's what he stood for. It's just a blue-perfect joy for me to join you as we celebrate our tremendous 2008 Democratic victories and begin now. Now comes the hard work of taking our country back from the greedheads and boneheads, the Bushites and BSers, the big shots, the bankers, and the bastards who've been stealing it from us. You know, they say that the worst job in the circus is cleaning up after the elephants. Well, now, speaking of Bushites and bastards, we're now 1 month, 1 week, 5 days, about 15 hours, I think about 10 minutes and maybe 45 seconds before George W. checks out of the White House. if you go on my website, jimhightower.com, we've had a clock ticking there, down to the second, for the last couple of years, and it just lifts your spirits every morning to check that clock. And you might, not everybody's going to get to go to the inauguration and everything, but if you don't get to go, you can do what the good folks in San Francisco is doing. They are having, at exactly 12 noon on January 20th, a synchronized flush. There they go. And you might want to flush twice just to make sure that Bush's buddy Buckshot Cheney goes with him. But of course, as you and I know, it's not enough to flush Bush, as good as that feels. Nor is it enough to cheer Barack Obama as he goes inside the Oval Office. As wonderful as that feels. Imagine a community organizer as President of the United States. Eat your heart out, Sarah Palin, gosh darn you. But as Obama himself said again and again, he is not the change. You are. We are the change. We cannot now just crank back in our lazy boys, thinking, well, Barack will do the heavy lifting for us. Look what is waiting for him in Washington. Look what is waiting for Gary as well. Sander, Carl. 13,000 corporate lobbyists. That's how many there are in Washington. 13,000 corporate lobbyists. There are 535 members of Congress. 13,000 corporate lobbyists. Wall Street scavengers, the war machine, the GOP, monkey wrenchers. They're all there. So for those of us at the grassroots level, our work has just begun. We must become the counterforce to these insiders. We must surround the White House, figuratively and possibly literally. We must back up and buck up Obama, emboldening him to be even bolder than he might imagine he could be. Now is our moment for audacity. Now is our moment at the grassroots level to step forward. This is not a new task. You know about it. You just experienced it in the election right here. You're on the road team. Brother Joe Peters of the UAW and the great work that y'all do. Wanda Rager, the 400,000 door knockers of Gary's campaign. The Democratic Party, you have to have an organization. I speak to you as somebody who actually got elected in the state of Texas, much to the amusement of people down there for a couple of terms. And I can tell you that politics is not a natural act. You do not get there by accident. You get there because there's an organization, there are people behind you, there's things happening. I compare it, there's a hardware store in my town of Austin, Texas, right near my home. I frequent it regularly. It's smaller than this room right here. Harold's Hardware is the name of it. It's a great place. You can go there. They will sell you one nail. You don't have to buy the whole package. One nail. They'll work with you on your product. What are you trying to build? They'll say, well, I'm trying to do a bookshelf. Well, let's pencil it out here. They'll loan you a tool. You can take a tool home and bring it back. And Harold's slogan is, together we can do it yourself. That's got to be our slogan, doesn't it? We can't do it ourselves. But together, organized, we can do big things. And that's why I'm so happy to be with you Michigan Democrats tonight, you accomplished agitators who know that we progressives can only win an inside fight when we have the outside motivated and moving. I referred to you at the top of this little peroration as agitators. The powers that be try to make that a pejorative, Oh, those agitators. Our workers were perfectly happy in this plant till those union agitators came in and started bothering. The poor people didn't mind living up against that toxic waste site until those environmental agitators came in. Well, hogwash and horse hockey agitators, they're what built America. We wouldn't have an America were it not for agitators. So when they call you an agitator, you can say to them, "You damn right, that's the center post in the washing machine that gets the dirt out." We need a lot more of that, don't we? Agitation. I know it's not easy. Those of you who are on the front lines of organizing, I know it's not easy. Get the feeling like that guy that B.B. King sings about. Nobody likes you but your mama, and she might be jiving you too. Did you ever get the feeling like that? Not easy, but it is essential if America's ever to achieve those ideals, that goal of egalitarianism, then we have to have the agitators. You know, a great guy, Louis Grizzard, late great Southern humorist, Louis Grizzard once described what we all know in the South as the difference between being naked and being naked. Naked means you have no clothes on. Naked, that means you have no clothes on and you're up to something. That's what I like about you Oakland Democrats. I'm not sure I want to think of Carl Levin as naked, but nonetheless. My message to you is that this is a big time in America, a huge opportunity for you and me. It's not just about the war, the economy, the environment, the Constitution. It's about the very idea of America itself. The notion that we're all in this together. The common good, that ethic that unites us as a big, sprawling, brawling nation of people. Diverse and dispersed. How do we hold together? It's that idea of the common good. And that ideal is under assault by the plutocratic, autocratic, kleptocratic elites in Washington and on Wall Street, pushing a pernicious new ethic of greed that says, "I got mine, you get yours. Never give a sucker an even break caveat emptor. I'm rich and you're not. Adios, chump." That's pretty much what they're saying to us. They're saying that the good fortunes of the few can be taken care of without worrying about the well-being of the many. Well, that's some kind of a country, but that's not America. And that's our fight. That's what we're in. What kind of America are we going to have? And now we have this great opportunity. And the good news is that the people are on to this cabal of ignorance and arrogance, this ethic of greed. I saw it expressed on a bumper sticker 4 or 5 years ago. Change is not new, by the way. I know we got the big mantra of change this year's political time. But change, people have been fighting for change for a long, long time. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I saw this bumper sticker on an old beat-up pickup truck in Austin. That's redundant, actually, in Austin, beat-up pickup truck. Nonetheless, this bumper sticker said, "Where are we going? And what am I doing in this handbasket?" You know, people don't know every detail of it, but they do know their detail of it. And as we saw on November 4th, people are on the move. That's why 85% of the American people say our leaders have led us down the wrong path. Why would they think that? Because it's true, of course. Wrong path? Look at our disastrous economic path of tinkle-down economics. I've got to admit, this is not new. 30 years. For 30 years at least, we've been pursuing this goal of privatizing, downsizing, and globalizing. And a push pushed with a maniacal vengeance by Bush and Company over the last 8 years. George W. darts around like a sand flea on steroids talking about jobs. I created jobs. 150,000 new jobs last month. Well, first of all, that's a pathetic job creation record. But second of all, the issue is not jobs, is it? Slaves had jobs. The issue is wages. It's income. It's middle-class possibility. You could go out here any place in town and talk to a waitress and say, "George W. created 150,000 new jobs last month." She'd say, "Yeah, I know, I had 3 of them." That's not what we're at. Want to know what they think about about jobs, look at the minimum wage. One increase in the past decade. Now $6.75 an hour. $6.75, that's $13,000 roughly for a year's work. Gross in both terms. What means that term? The minimum wage is not an economic issue, it's a moral issue. It just says this, we won't let people fall lower than this. You know, we're a society, we're civilized folks. We're not going beneath this. It's a moral issue. Yet the Congress, in those 10 years, while they would not raise the minimum wage, they did raise their own pay. In 9 of those 10 years. Luckily, we had Tom DeLay a couple of years ago to explain this for us. Tom DeLay was on Meet the Press. And they said, what about this? You won't raise the minimum wage, but you raise your own pay. And Tom DeLay said, I challenge anyone to live on my salary. You look at a guy like DeLay and you think, 100,000 sperm and you were the fastest? You want to look at the wrong path? Here they come again. We got the Republican theory of relativity on bailouts. It works like this. If you're a high-rolling Wall Street finagler who crashed Americans' economy, here's $8 trillion. You've been told it's $700 billion, right? The bailout? It's $8 trillion. Not $700 billion. They've already put up, you and my money, $8 trillion. That's 8 with 12 zeros behind it. No questions asked. Here it is. You don't even have to tell us how you're spending it. Here it is. But if you're an auto worker who actually makes something in our country, something tangible, something useful, maybe something essential, then you get a scolding, a pay cut, and a maybe from this Congress. There's a guy named Bob Corker, I never heard of him, senator from down in Tennessee, Republican, Senator Bob Corker. What an appropriate name, a Corker. He's demanding wage, health care, pension givebacks from the UAW. This guy hurled $8 trillion down the toilet to Wall Street hucksters, and now he says he won't even contemplate a $34 billion loan to Detroit unless it includes rigorous measures, that's his term, rigorous measures to punish hard-working middle-class families who are the source of our nation's recovery. He's saying that good wages, middle-class wages, are the problem in America instead of the model. I mean, if ignorance ever goes to $100 a barrel, I want drilling rights on Bob Corker's head. Where does he come up with that? Want to see the wrong path? It's happening right down the road here, across the lake in Chicago. Republic Windows and Doors Corporation. Seen it on the news the last couple of days. Shut down last Friday. With 3 days' notice, they fired 250 families, not workers, families, out of that company. They stole their vacation pay that the workers had owned. They denied the severance that they were due. They were stiffed, these workers, these 250 families, by the Bank of America, which is the lender to Republic Windows and Doors. Bank of America, which got a $25 billion bailout from you and me. The Bank of America CEO is making millions in pay and bonuses and health care and pensions. Yet he's stiffing 250 families down there in Chicago. You know, some of these guys getting so rich they could afford to air condition hell. And I tell you what, they better be setting some money aside for that project. Yet, these are the people who say that they represent the moral values of our nation.
Yeah, right.
George W. and his hatchet man Karl Rove, they made a big point of this about the Christian faith that George W. George said, I was a Methodist, grew up in Methodist in Midland, Texas. Well, isn't that odd? Because I grew up a Methodist in Texas, over in a little church, Waples Memorial Methodist Church in Denison, Texas. But I must have gone to a entirely different Methodist church than he went to, because I remember many a sermon that began with Jesus' words in Matthew 19:24, saying it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. I recall too that the greatest sin of them all, the root of all evil, according to the Apostle Paul, was the love of money. And also, I recall that Jesus threw the money changers out of the temple for charging less than they now charge you and me for our Visa and Master charge, by the way. I also recall that Jesus fed all of the masses that day at the Sea of Galilee. Everybody. Not just those who came up in Hummers and had platinum cards. Everybody got fishes and loaves. I recall the hellacious fate of Dives, the rich man who would not give the beggar Lazarus even the crumbs off of his table. And I recall that Jesus flatly said, you cannot serve both God and mammon. And in fact, if you read the good book, you'll find that Jesus talked more about the economic justice than any other secular issue. And if you really want to bamboozle one of these little right-wing wingers who come up to you talking about how God is a Republican and Democrats are the devils, offer this to them. Ask them this question. Did you know that you can take the word Presbyterians and rearrange the letters and it will spell Britney Spears? Ask them what that means. Well, now for the good news. The people of this great country are revolting, in the very best sense of that term. Overwhelmingly, the people of this country are with us. Susan and Mark and I, we wrote this latest book, Swim Against the Current here. We did something kind of rude to the establishment. We went down into the establishment polls. This is the Fox poll, CNN poll, NBC, Wall Street Journal, all the rest of it. And we dug into the data that they collect, but never report to us. Kind of interesting because it offers a very different perspective on our country. For example, they say we are a conservative, go along to get along sort of country, don't rock the boat sort of people. Yet 66% of the American people want the government to guarantee health care for everyone, even if it means raising their own taxes to achieve that goal. 2/3 majority of the American people are on our side. 87% want the federal government to negotiate with drug companies to lower those prescription prices. 76%. Too much power concentrated in the hands of a few corporations. 83% want stricter regulations to protect our environment. 68% say labor unions are necessary to protect working families today, not in 1932, today. So, the people of America, we don't have to fear the people, we just got to get with them, as we saw in this last election. And as Marco and I try to document here in this book a little bit, the people all across the country are not merely talking about this, they're acting on it. They're in active rebellion. Our book is really about the plucky spirit of the American people. It's an untold story. The power establishment doesn't want you to know that people are thinking exactly the same kind of thoughts that you were thinking. Millions of folks are out there bucking the system, defying the corporate order, living their progressive values in politics, in business, in healthcare, in banking, in religion, in all aspects of our lives. They're defining their own version of success. Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." And people seem to understand that. More and more people are saying, there's got to be a better way of doing this, than what we're told. The powers that be say that the corporate way is the only way, that you can't break loose from the corporate tentacles. But as a friend of mine who's a pioneer in the organic movement says, those who say it can't be done should not interrupt those who are doing it. You're a part of that. It's up to us. We can have the kind of culture, the kind of life, the kind of country that we want if we dare to do something that is really important in America, and that is to be disobedient, to get out of the rut, to create our own paths. George W. a couple of years ago said, "I'm the decider." Well, obviously he wasn't. I don't know if you saw George W. He's moving to Dallas now. Got himself a new 8,500 square foot house down there, $2.5 million place. Living next to T. Boone Pickens and Tom Hicks and Mark Cuban and others of his ilk. Notice he's not going back to the ranch. Isn't that interesting? During the campaign, he only bought that ranch, by the way, the year before he decided to run for president. Carl Rove bought the ranch for him. Actually, it's not a ranch, it's a ranchette. And it was not even in ranching country. That's farm country. It was a pig farm before he bought it. Isn't that interesting? Pig farm. Yeah. I don't know if you ever noticed, but the media would always be there. You know, the president is at the ranch this weekend. "What are you doing, Mr. President?" "I'm clearing brush," Bush said. Clearing brush. They raised brush on that ranch. That's what they did. There were no cattle. Isn't that interesting? A ranch with no cattle whatsoever. And George, he had that hat, you know, it had to be a $1,000 hat, bought it at Neiman Marcus, I'm sure, and had that hat, didn't have a spot on it, you know, an amazing cowboy hat. But you know, there's a $1,000 hat on a 10-cent head if I ever saw one. So he's not going back to the ranch yet. He's going to be there in Dallas and Preston Hollow, a very fancy area of Dallas. Well, George W. is not the decider. He never was. But neither is Obama. And that's what we grassroots Democrats have got to understand, what he understands. Through him, we open the door to the White House. But now we must go inside the White House. It's not enough for him to go in. We've got to go inside with Barack Obama. I was an Edwards guy first, and then I endorsed Obama in the Texas primary. And I said then I thought the most significant thing about the Obama phenomena was not Obama, it was the phenomena. The fact that millions of people were thinking change is possible. And now we know that that change is possible, but it will not happen without you and me pushing from the outside. We're going to have to be on the internet. We're going to have to be on the phones. We may have to be in the streets, but we're going to have to be there. We have to push through the change that we want and that I think he believes in. You know, Franklin Roosevelt said a group came to him to talk about poverty in America, and he said, "I agree with you. Now make me do it." And that's what we have to do. We have to be the force that gives him the power to do it. He does not have the power. We have the power from the countryside. We've got to push it. One more story from my book here. We'll shut it down. We write about a guy who was a tourist in Bangkok. Came out of the Great Temple. And there in the glare of the sunlight was a monk over here. And he signaled to the monk, "Could I snap your picture?" The monk nodded. He took the picture, and over here was a boy selling water. And he went over to the boy and bought a bottle of water, and he paid for it and waited for his change, but it was not forthcoming. And the man thought there was a language problem, so he pointed to his palm and kind of lip-synced and said, "Don't I get change?" And the boy looked up at him and looked over at the monk and looked back and in perfect English said, "Change comes from within." And that's the truth. We're the change. It's got to come from within, and that's the good news. It is building up from within the countryside. Again, this is a big time in our country. I was in Vermont a couple of years ago with our friend Bernie Sanders, who, for God's sake, is a U.S. Senator. Who could believe it? And a guy came up wearing a political button, and it was the best one I ever saw. It said, "Wearing a button is not enough. We can't be a nation of button wearers. We've got to be a little bigger than that. We've got to forge those coalitions out there. We've got to, realize, as Jesse Jackson said, we might not all have come over on the same boat, but we're in the same boat now. And that's a powerful reality. So what's happening to Detroit and the UAW is happening to Americans everywhere. It's not your fight. It's our fight. It's a fight for the middle class in our country. And we've got to ignore those naysayers who say we can't hold everybody together. The coalition that was put together for Obama, they said, well, you can't hold that together. It's like herding cats to get all that going. But I got to tell you, anybody who says you cannot herd cats, never tried a can opener. They will come, won't they? And our can opener is that set of values: economic fairness, social justice, equal opportunity for all people. That's what we represent. That's in the heart and the guts of every American. It's rarely appealed to, but now it has been. And we need to build on that spirit and make it come true. And then, finally, we've got to recognize we're in this for the long haul. You know, as Chairman was indicating about Oakland County here, you know, just a very few short years ago, we wouldn't have thought it possible to even have a meeting with this many people in a room, much less elect people as you just did. You got to persevere. You got to push it. Democracy is not a quick fix. We keep building. My friend Willie Nelson said to me once, Hightower, the early bird might get the worm, but it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. I might want to explain that to some of your sailors. Well, leave me with this thought, and thank you for so much of what you're doing. There's a moving company in my town of Austin. When I moved to Austin in mid-70s, and this moving company had an advertising slogan that I liked, so I stole it for political purposes. They had an ad in the Yellow Pages, and it said, "If we can get it loose, we can move it." That's what you're doing, getting it loose at the grassroots level so the people can move it for themselves. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Proud to be here.